On today's show, the vibes were immaculate for the Atlanta Hawks in their opener of the preseason on this Tuesday evening. We'll get into all of what transpired from Risacher to the rest of the young guys to Trae Young, etc. And all of that is coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1814 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday here. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. You begin the season with a big return at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You can start with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to tell you at the top of the podcast, as I always do here on the show, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you happen to find your podcasts. That includes Spotify, that includes Apple, Amazon Music, Overcast, etc. On the audio side, we're also on YouTube. On the video side, please go ahead and like this episode as you are watching it, and please comment there and subscribe to the podcast on that video service. Today's podcast, we'll be diving in to what became a very, very interesting and pretty much upbeat game for the Atlanta Hawks on this Tuesday, a 131-130 victory over the Indiana Pacers in the opener of the exhibition schedule for Atlanta. And quite honestly, I'll just dive in here. If you're a new listener, what we do on these post-game shows, generally speaking, is I will be sure to touch on kind of my high-level takeaways from the game, my observations kind of in more nitty-gritty fashion during the game, my player-by-player breakdowns at the end of the show, and then any other news and look-aheads we might get into. It's comprehensive on purpose. Even if we can't cover every single thing that happens in the game, I strive to kind of give you the overall picture, whether you watch the game or not. But honestly, I will lead with this. It was a game that kind of provided immaculate vibes for the Hawks. I don't usually say that kind of thing on the podcast, but it really was true. It was made even better by the Hawks actually winning this game, basically at the buzzer. Look at this preseason game. The end result is not the most important thing in any exhibition setting like this. But I would have said the same thing whether they won or whether they lost, honestly, in this game. It was that kind of intrigue, I would say, for Atlanta. Everything basically went the way you were hoping it was going to go for the Hawks in this game. Like, realistically, I can't say I would have foreseen a better night for Atlanta. And it's only one night. It's also a preseason game. I understand all of that. I promise you I do. But the young guys played well for the Hawks in this game. The system stuff that the Hawks wanted to do worked in this game. There were lots of ball movement across the board for Atlanta, and everything that you would want for this Hawks team, the way they played stylistically, the results, et cetera, et cetera. I'll have more detail later on in the show, but for me, the number one takeaway by far, honestly, kind of has to be Zaccharie Risacher and how well he played. If you are just hopping on board now, Risacher, of course, the number one overall pick for the Hawks this summer, and really probably the least hyped number one overall pick in the last decade plus in the NBA. There's not been a whole lot of buzz outside of Atlanta for him. And look, everyday listeners will know this already, but I'm not someone that gets over my skis on these things. And trust me, I'll probably at least attempt to keep things in perspective, both for Risacher tonight as well as the future, as well as Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, though, you can't really ask reasonably for a better debut for Risacher, given all of that. He had the numbers that we'll get into later on, but he showed the entire package of what you would want if you were the Hawks, making him the number one overall pick in the draft. And I've said this many times before, like, he didn't have the traditional quote-unquote package of a number one overall pick. He wasn't supposed to be a dominant scorer, all this stuff. But the Hawks have always thought of him as this player who can do a lot of things for you and be a very, very clean and high-end fit at the NBA level, given his package of skills, his size, his skill set, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, one thing that was big here is that he played like a veteran in this game. Despite being a 19-year-old kid in a country he's not living in across the world from where he grew up, all those things, playing his first game, feeling some sort of pressure, I'm sure. He played like a veteran in this game, which is, I know, an overarching statement on purpose, but he kind of did the little things that you would want on offense and defense in this game. Like, he made the right passes on offense. He made the right rotations on defense. He shot the ball when he should shoot the ball. He's a good shooter already. That's already playing up. He has the size to kind of magnify that. He cut when he should cut. He threw in some of the highlight plays that you would want, of course, to get people excited about him. Like, he had this between the legs pass. It was very, very funny and awesome. And like, I love subtlety. I love nuance. And he did all those things too, but also give you the high level takeaways, kind of checking all those boxes. He played with a lot of confidence in this game, I thought. And obviously, some of that stuff may wax and wane throughout the season, etc. But he looked comfortable. And that was the consensus. Like Trae Young talked about after the game as well, that Risacher just played confidently and comfortably, which is good to see. That's very evident, I thought. I don't want to overstate this either, but because especially in the preseason game, but Risacher was plus 15 in the game in the plus minus, where no one else on the team was better than plus 2, and that was Trae. That's just funny, and the way this all went. So the Hawks played really well, and so did he on the whole. And then, of course, he made shots. And that won't always be the case like this. And Quinn said post-game he'll have some good games and some bad games. He's right about that, of course. But the idea of a 6'9" wing who can dribble, pass, and shoot and defend was kind of very much evident in this spot for the Hawks. And what they want for him, what they expect him to be, what they're projecting for him, all those things. He threw in some really good hands. Like, he made little plays, he made explosive plays, et cetera, et cetera. He made, sort of that veteranosity that you don't often see from a guy his age. And that high-level feel, the way he feels the game and thinks the game and reacts and all of that stuff. So I think it's very reasonable to be excited about this. It is one game. I will tell you, like, he's going to probably not play this well all the time. Quinn Snyder said the same thing post-game. He wasn't trying to run on anything, I promise you, but he was like, basically, Zach's going to have a lot of good games, lots of bad games too. All that's fair, but on a night where there was a lot that went right for the Hawks, you kind of have to begin with him. I think it's very clearly the number one storyline in Atlanta on this Tuesday into Wednesday, and he earned that with the way that he played. Elsewhere, briefly, before we move on to these more subtleties in this game, I'll say the individual stuff for later on in the podcast, but the Hawks had a 119 offensive rating in this game. That's very strong, of course. I will definitely discount some of this stuff, like team-wise and preseason, because there's always a lot of noise going on in this exhibition kind of schedule. But the Hawks are also playing a team that I would say is not great defensively without its best defender, Miles Turner. But at the same time, they had 64% true shooting in this game. They grabbed about a third of their available offensive rebounds in this game, which is very good. They assisted on more than 70% of their field goals in this game. So that's all good. 39% from three, 60% or so from inside the arc, 31 free throw attempts, 35 assists. They gave the ball away a lot. 20 turnovers in this game is too many, but the nuts and bolts were very strong. I was impressed with the ball movement in this game, the player movement as well on offense. They got to some 5-out spacing looks with Larry Nance at center that were very intriguing. And after kind of a really bad start that we'll come back to, Capella found his legs with the offense as well. So it wasn't just the 5-out stuff. They were good, even with Capella on the floor as the game went along offensively. And that was good to see from versatility perspective without a Kongwu, we'll get back to in a second as well. And like defensively, it was not as good or as consistent for sure, but there were some high highs. They forced 21 turnovers. They had 14 steals in this game. They got smacked in the mouth, I should say, at the beginning of this game, and they reacted to that efficiently and good on defense. From that point forward, after the first 5 minutes, they were pretty good in this game on defense. They did struggle to rebound, I would say, especially without Jalen Johnson on the floor, which is going to be a problem right now, in particular with the personnel they have. We'll circle that later on. But they had some, I would say, preseason type of moments on defense in this game, but it was still kind of encouraging. I think Dyson Daniels in particular changes the math for the Hawks defensively, as I've been saying all summer long. He's a high-end defender already. Risacher, that length he has is very intriguing. I thought the bigs were very solid. It was a team-wide effort on defense. And yeah, it was an offense-first game in a lot of ways on both sides with a lot of scoring all the way through. But the Hawks played well. And it wasn't just like, I don't really care that they won the game. Is it more fun that they did? Yes. It was an awesome ending. Seth Lenny bearing a game winner. I get all that. But it was the underneath stuff, like the nuts and bolts, like the player stuff, especially young guys standing out. It was, like I said at the very top of the podcast, immaculate buys because almost everything went well in this game, which cannot be the case moving forward. I guarantee you when the Hawks play again, it may not go this well. It is what it is. But for one night, and now a pretty long break, as we'll get into later on, with the Hawks having a game postponed for a few days, it was a good kind of time to have this night because now you go back to practice, vibes are good, upbeat, et cetera, and it was a really fun night, honestly. A lot of people, even that they were kind of hardened people to covering the sport, were kind of like, man, that was a lot of fun. And it was. It was first game of the season. It didn't mean anything, quote unquote, in the standings, but a lot of positive data points, and we'll have more coming up in a second. First, though, a word from our partners on today's podcast. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. what's something that happens to scare you? For me, I'm really afraid of heights. I will definitely admit that. It's been that way for a very long time in my life. But it's almost Halloween, and some of us can have fun with what scares us as well. What about those fears, though, does not involve zombies and ghosts? For instance, like for me, again, it's the heights. But sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back as a result of that. And therapy can help for everybody. And that really is why you should be checking out the folks at BetterHelp. You can learn positive coping skills at BetterHelp, as well as how to set better boundaries. And BetterHelp can help you be empowered to be the best version of yourself. I have my own stresses in my life I deal with on a regular basis. I promise you that. We can all benefit, including me, from getting things off our chest. If you think that while starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try right now. It's entirely online. And BetterHelp is designed to be convenient and flexible to your schedule. That is really helpful if you're people like me that have a lot of time crunches in your life. That convenience and flexibility is of the highest importance. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you'll be matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists anytime if you want to for no additional charge. Take off the mask with the folks at BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. One more time, the place to go is Better. That's Better, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, and we'll dive in now to kind of how this game unfolded. And I wanted to lead with the positive, to be sure, because there was a lot of positives in this game. But I want to go back to before tip-off for a little bit of context here. The Hawks were without two players in this game. Onyeka Okongwu, which was not a huge surprise, but we'll get into that in a second, and then Bogdan Bogdanovic. And Bogey, on the bright side, is not hurt. Bogey just was a rest day for him. He, of course, famously played all the way into the summer, all the way to the end of the Olympic tournament with Serbia. And just a little bit of a rest day. I think Bogey would always want to play, but he did not play in this game. And that's notable because obviously a lot of the lineups, a lot of the rotation stuff that we'll talk about later on will change a little bit with Bogey because Bogey is obviously a fixture in all of these lineups for the Hawks. Offensively, he's their best shooter, et cetera, et cetera. Now, on the other side, you have Onyeka Okongwu. So I've been kind of talking about this a little bit in recent days. Back to Media Day, if you listen to the podcast about a week and a half ago now, I flagged that Landry Fields did not say with any certainty or confidence that Okongwu was 100% and cleared to play in training camp. Same for Okongwu. They both kind of tiptoed around it at Media Day. Then later on, I actually played this audio for you a couple days ago. Quinn Snyder had a similar question and a similar dance around answer about Okongwu. But obviously the first data point in public is the game on Tuesday. And I'll just play the audio for you. Quinn Snyder, before the game, was asked by Caleb Johnson of 92.9 The Game about Okongwu's status for the game. And here's what he had to say about whether Okongwu would play or not.
At Media Day a week ago, Landry said that Onyeka wasn't quite 100% yet. So I'm just curious, is he available? Is there any injury issues that you're going to have tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there for what Landry said. We talk to our health performance people all the time, and O's progress is going to continue to evolve, and the way that it needs to have him not only healthy but in shape and ready to go. It's aggressive, but we're also patient with the situation. The only thing you can control is the time and the work you put into it. We'll continue to have updates for you.
So you hear there a whole lot of nothing, candidly. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just what it is. Now, Quinn did not say definitively in that response that he would not play in this game. But the tone was clear that he would not play. And then by the time, an hour later or so, I broke the news. I believe I was the first one to get this, that he was not available to play. So what we don't know right now is anything beyond this. But Okongwu was in street clothes on the bench. And to this point, no one, whether it be Landry or Quinn or Onyeka, has said that he is 100% cleared for camp. I've heard some things, like nothing reportable, but he was clearly not ready to go today. It just has to go back to the beginning here. He had the toe injury at the end of last season. He had a procedure in April. I saw him in July. He was still hobbling then. So it's not clear how serious it is. It's not clear from what Quinn is saying or what Landry is saying if there's any timetable. But he did not play in this game, and that's kind of the one maybe storm cloud around this one. Is like we don't really know what's going on there. But hopefully we'll get some information in the future. And just to say this out loud, there are no definitive injury reports that are mandated in the NBA for preseason games. So they'll also have to list them in any possible way. There's no inactive list. We did not know until I was told and broke the news that they were not going to be available because if he'd have been in uniform, we would have known even longer than that. So all that said, that's the latest there. And then one more thing on the personnel front, and then we'll dive into the game itself. I reported pregame that Cody Zeller was not even in the building tonight for the Hawks. Not a surprise there. I expected that to happen, but another data point that I would say he does not project to be a factor for the Hawks on the court this season at this point in time. I'm expecting a buyout or maybe a trade, but not for him to be in uniform and be around the roster. This again, like he wasn't at media day. I talked about this a lot the last couple of weeks, so I won't do the full spiel now, but him not even being there today is like he's not with the team. It is what it is. There will be a buyout, it seems like, or maybe a trade or whatever. But for now, I am moving forward with him not in the plans, and how the logistics go down from there remains to be seen. Okay, with that out of the way, the guys who were available, which is everybody else. So on the positive side, Seth Lundy was available. Like he was a guy that had questions about. He had not been cleared, at least according to what had been said going into media day. But he ended up playing, hitting the game winner. That's great to see. No other injuries. That's all good. So it's just a Congo really that you're looking at this point in time. But back to the beginning of the game, unsurprisingly, Dyson Daniels was guarding Tyrese Halliburton. So that's why you have Dyson Daniels in a lot of ways. I'll just say that. But it was a rough start. Like Jalen had the first bucket of the night. Nice play by him. But the Hawks called timeout like 2.5 minutes into the game in the middle of what became a 22-5 run by Indiana to begin the night. Easy dunks that were allowed by the Hawks. Offensively, it was kind of sloppy. The spacing was not really crisp enough, I didn't think. They also missed some looks, so it wasn't quite that bad. They were like 3 of 12 from the field at the beginning of the game, including 0 of 5 from DeAndre Hunter to start the game, who was really rough at the outset of this one. They interestingly used Hunter as a on-ball screen center a few times in the first quarter, which is not a huge part of what they did last year. That's notable to me. It didn't necessarily work a whole lot, but like a nice kind of wrinkle there. There was a nice back cut from Dyson that actually Trae found him for a dunk there. Rotationally, the first subs were Risacher and Kobe Bufkin together mid-quarter. Then it was Bufkin, Daniels, and Risacher together in the no Trae minutes. And obviously no Bogey in this game as well, which kind of is a factor all the way through here. Nance was the backup center, as you might imagine, without Okongwu available, and Clint started. Krejci came in when Trae and Jalen sat. Just for the record, to say it out loud, if you missed the game, it was Trae, Dyson, Hunter, Jalen, and Capella that started the game. And the clear next 4 were Bufkin, Risacher, and then Nance and Veet as kind of the top 9 in minutes in this game, and the 10th spot kind of rotated through. So they actually, I would say very intentionally, tied Trae and Jalen together the entire game. I believe they came in and out 3 times, and they came in and out together. So I don't know if that's going to continue. One of the theories is that maybe they might want Jalen on the court when Trae is off the court. That might happen in the future, but for today, it was I would say explicitly not that. It was they were trying to tie those guys together. Risacher had a couple of nice plays early on. He had a nice tip on a rebound that is kind of a veteran play that young guys don't always make. He made some good reads, his first 3, etc. And the Hawks actually, after being down by 17 points, had a 19-4 run at the end of the first quarter, capped by a pretty tough 3 by Trae at the buzzer in kind of trademark fashion. They shot really well in the first quarter, actually. 5-8 from 3, 10 assists. They made basically everything the last 5 minutes of the first quarter, which was helpful in erasing that slow start. But it was a slow start. The Hawks did not play well the first 5 minutes of the game or so. And then from that point forward, they really pretty much soundly outplayed the Pacers from middle of the first quarter on. The Pacers did have a big run, though. In the second quarter, 8-0 run to begin things. Unlike the first quarter, the blame couldn't go to Hunter because he wasn't on the court at that point in time. People were very mad at Hunter in this game, as we'll come back to. They got a little bit stabilized after that, fortunately. There's some good passes from Hunter, from Bufkin, to set up some dunks from Risacher and Capella. Bufkin, I thought, was really solid in this game, as we'll come back to later on. Dyson had a nice flash play where he pump faked, beat a closeout, and then finished a pretty I would say, crafty layup around the rim. Hunter was better as the game went along. He did play faster, I thought, which is largely good for him, but defensively in the first quarter or so was really rough and then shot very poorly in the game. The Hawks were down by 5 at halftime, largely because they were 1 of 11 from 3 in the second quarter. In fact, both teams played all 4 quarters tonight, and everyone scored 30 points or more in every quarter other than the Hawks in the second, because they couldn't make a shot. They were 1 of 11 from 3 in that period. But again, in the first half, they were losing. And I said this in real time on Twitter, so it's not like I'm making it up. it was very positive, in my opinion, in the first half, despite the fact that they were losing, because all the young guys looked good. They responded to the slow start, et cetera, and then defensively it picked up as the game went along. Okay, I'll have more on the second half of this game in a second when it comes to how things unfolded in brief fashion, and then also my player-by-player evaluations on today's podcast. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and the season is now here, basically. Start the season with a big return, though, at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and you can check out a ton of different information sets at FanDuel, from the latest stats to live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets at FanDuel Sportsbook. You also get started the season with a great offer from FanDuel, and that is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. You should also know that at this point that FanDuel Sportsbook is really easy to use. They have all the stuff they're looking for across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props, future bets, live betting, same-game parlays, and so much more. The app is safe. It's secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. NBA is first and foremost on this podcast. Plus, they have WNBA, NFL, college football, baseball, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And all you have to do is go visit FanDuel.com to get started and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. One more time here. Just visit FanDuel.com. It's FanDuel.com and check out America's #1 sportsbook. So the second half was a little bit less exciting, although it was very exciting at the same time. Like, the end of this game was memorable, the walk-off three, etc. You never know, like, how much guys are going to play in these games because Quinn won't tell us ahead of time. But by the end of the third quarter, it's basically not a regular rotation anymore. But for the most part, for 3 quarters, it was a relatively regular rotation, with the exception, of course, of not having Bogey and Okongwu. It was very fast pace in the third quarter on both sides, good or bad. It was more scattershot, I would say. Gave up a couple of easy putbacks on defense, I would say, in that stretch. But Trae had it going early in the third. He had 8 points in a relative hurry for him and getting anywhere he wanted to go, basically, on offense. Risacher then threw the between-the-legs pass to Capella for the and one. That was a wild play. I was surprised he even tried it. It was good to see him play with that kind of level of confidence. And then he had actually a nice dunk as well, off a pass by Kobe Bufkin, who found him streaking down the lane. They pivoted a little bit deeper into the rotation late in the third. It was David Roddy first as the 11th guy to enter the game for the Hawks. And then as things went on, they went back to Garrison Matthews, they went to Mo Gay, and then Barlow, Keaton Wallace, and Seth Lundy at the very end of the game. But the Hawks shot 78% from the field in the third quarter on the way to 41 points. In fact, they scored 41 points in the quarter while turning the ball over 5 times. That's actually hard to do. And they did it because they shot the ball incredibly well. So by the end of the third quarter, it was basically, I don't want to say garbage time because it's kind of what I would say, but no one was playing of the key guys in the fourth quarter. It was all deeper bench guys on both sides. But it was frantic. Moget came in. The headline, probably the best highlight of the game, actually, happened from Beat Krejci in this game. He threw this crazy, full court bounce pass to Kobe for a dunk in the fourth quarter. That was a Pistol Pete level pass. It was kind of crazy. They were down 4 late. Garrison had the big 3 to tie the game with 3.5 minutes to go. They actually went deep into the bench during this time, so they weren't pulling out all the stops to try to win the game. They went to Barlow and Lundy and Keaton, the 3 two-way guys, together in the fourth quarter. It was pretty ugly on offense at times without Kobe and without Trae on the court in the fourth quarter. Keaton got blocked at the rim with 20 seconds to go on a shot for the lead. The Hawks fouled, and then they're down 3 in the final seconds. Then the Pacers intentionally foul to avoid the game-tying 3, but Roddy makes the first free throw. This is the second one, and then it's tipped out. A nice play by Don Barlow, get a hand on the ball, and they get to Lundy, who then buries, of course, the game winner with about a second to go, and the Hawks win the game. So normally, if this game mattered, I would have gone painstakingly through possession by possession, but obviously it didn't matter. But still, I was happy for Seth. I've always been a big fan of Seth Lundy's. I think he's a very good guy, from what I understand, also a good player who has been banged up so far. I still like him long-term, but good to see him make a big shot. And then, obviously, again, the vibes are just increased when you win the game. And everybody wants to win. They all know it doesn't really matter that much, but everybody wants to win. These guys are professional athletes, and it was more fun to win than not. All right, to the player stuff, and I'll be brief for the most part on this podcast on the players. I won't talk about everyone because, obviously, some guys came in late, Barlow, Lundy, Wallace, etc. I thought Vit Krejci was really good at times. His first stint, which will be forgotten now, was actually pretty rough for Vit, but after that, he was very good. 7 points, 6 assists in 23 minutes, 2 steals, and a block. Vit has always been able to pass. Always. The shooting and the defense came along a lot later for Vit, but the passing has always been his probably number one skill. He looked good in this game, and I think that the Hawks still have a huge steal there with Vit Krejci. I thought Bufkin was very good in this game. One of the questions the Hawks have going into the season, I've been talking about a lot, is what happens when Trae sits. And this game is definitive. Whenever Trae sat, it was Kobe as the point guard. He did his job. He had 4 assists, 9 points in 22 minutes, ran the show, had a steal, had a block, and looked good. Again, it's one game for all of these young guys in particular, but I thought he definitely checked the box in game one of what the Hawks wanted to see from him. Garrison hit 2 threes, but was minus 11 in the game. He wasn't great. David Roddy was not a huge factor. He had 4 rebounds, had 8 points, and 4 turnovers, actually, weirdly, in 16 minutes. Nance was good. The Hawks were able to run some 5-out stuff through Larry Nance. This is not – I don't mean to sound negative about Okongwu because I'm not trying to say that. The gap between Okongwu and Nance in present day is not very big. And that's because Nance is good. It's not because Okongwu's bad. Nance is a good player. So that drop-off just at that spot is not huge at the moment. Nance is comfortable on the perimeter. He can rebound. He had 3 assists in this game, had 2 steals, made a 3. Looked good. Looked spry. Looked good to me, and I was encouraged by that. I've been saying all summer long, he's a very useful player, and he was in this game. I'll come back to Risacher in a second. Let's do this now. DeAndre Hunter had a rough game. Now, he did get better as the game went along, but unfortunately for him, by that point, the fan base in particular had soured. He started this game, I think, 0 of 7 or 0 of 8 from the field. He did have 4 assists in the game, a couple nice passes in the second half. But defensively, it was rough early on. Like, he had trouble staying in front of Siakam at times. Like, it was a rough one for Hunter. I'm not going to try to tell you it was great. There were some moments where he was better. I get it. Like, there was this notion I was seeing by the end of the game that, like, oh, he just won't play. Like, I'm sorry, folks. I don't mean to rain in your parade. He's going to play. I'm not telling you he's going to start. In fact, I'm intentionally not doing the starter discussion on this podcast because, in contrast to last year, the Hawks started a lineup in their first game of the preseason where that could be the opening night lineup. I'm not saying it's going to be, but it could be very recently with Hunter in it. Now, I understand people don't love it. Obviously, Risacher is the big shiny toy who was awesome in this game, but Hunter's going to play. I don't know if he's going to start. He's going to play. It is what it is, but hopefully he'll be better than he was in this game. He was not very good, and we'll leave it there. Capella, same thing, had kind of a slow start, but 11 points, 9 rebounds in 19 minutes. He was great on the glass, as he always is. Also was 5 of 5 at the free throw line. Shout out to Clint for that. Played fine. Looked fine. Looked like himself for the most part. Trae Young was very good. It didn't matter that much because he's always really good. But 17 points, 6 assists, 1 turnover in 21 minutes. He was 2 of 5 on 2s, but 3 of 5 on 3s. He looked good. Looked like himself. Dyson Daniels was really good in this game. 2 steals. Defensively, he pops right away, which I've been preaching all summer long, but people hopefully could see that now. It's already good defensively. 14 points. Like, I think in a normal game, I might have led with him. He was really good. It's just the fact that Risacher is an even bigger deal, but I thought Dyson was certainly worth noting how positive of a factor he was in this one. And then finally, Risacher. So 18 points in 23 minutes for Risacher. He was 4 of 5 on 2s, 3 of 4 on 3s, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 turnover, game best plus 15. Defensively looked good to me all the way across. Not like a huge productivity there, but certainly did his job. He's so long, which I think people probably should know at this point, but he's really long. Like, he's 6'9", he's all of 6'9", long arms. He knows how to use it. Like, he has a high release on offense. He gets hands in passing lanes. He plays wide. Like, I was really, really impressed with what I saw. Again, not trying to go crazy, but certainly what you want to see. And it will not surprise me if the Rookie of the Year market shifts a little bit towards him. I'm not saying he's going to be a favorite by tomorrow, but certainly a little bit more respect, I would imagine, after this game, if people were paying attention. That's not all I have on the game. One quick thing before we sign off the podcast is that I spent the first few minutes of yesterday's podcast, episode 1813, talking about Tony Bradley signing with the Hawks on Exhibit 10 contract. I did say on that podcast there's a pretty wide range for what Exhibit 10s can be, and I circled back at the end of that discussion to the assumption that I kind of always have about players on camp deals like this, and that's that they're usually waived. But this one happened very quickly. He was waived today. So the plan that I understand from talking to people today was that they want Bradley in the G League. That makes total sense to me. Having a real professional veteran center in the G League is very useful for when guys go down there to develop and to play. Play next to Don Barlow, play next to Keaton Wallace, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, long story short, the roster's back to 20 for the Hawks at this point in time. They will have to get down to 18. They do have the two non-guaranteed guys in Kevon Harris and Daquan Plowden, plus Zeller, who's on the roster still, TBD on that. But that's kind of just a housekeeping thing at the end of the podcast. And then the last thing, the Hawks were supposed to be playing on Thursday evening in Miami in their first road game. That has been postponed to next week because of the hurricane, which is scheduled, unfortunately, to hit Florida on Wednesday, as the Hawks would have been traveling to Miami. So I asked Quinn about this. I won't play the audio for you, but Quinn was very upbeat about what the league did, being proactive. All sides agreed on this. It was good for everybody for what he said. He thanked the league, also sent his prayers and thoughts to people, especially in North Carolina and Tennessee, but even in Florida and Georgia. They're dealing with the already effects of the previous hurricane, Helene, unfortunately. But it's the right call. That's what Quinn said too. I agree. Like, be proactive. There's no reason to go down there and play. But they are going to Miami next week. It's going to be instead on Wednesday, the 16th. They'll also have a back-to-back in road fashion. And that's controversial. Without going crazy into this, I'm sure Miami wanted the home game. So that's the way it has to happen for whatever reason. For me, I think the Hawks don't really care about this too much in that now they get to stay home for a while. They only have one trip now instead of two trips. It's a back-to-back, yes, but guys will be able to sit. They have 20 players. You can navigate that pretty easily. And in the end, not the biggest deal in the world. So messes the schedule a little bit, but alas, Quinn was totally understanding. The biggest thing is that basketball is not important. In the great scheme of things, in the world where people are dealing with hurricanes and fallouts and all those things, it's secondary. And we'll cover the game as it happens next week. But scheduling-wise, the Hawks do not play another game until Monday at home. And that's their final game of the preseason. So the next time they play will be the last preseason game at home on Monday. Then they'll go Wednesday to Miami and Thursday to Oklahoma City before the opener 2 weeks from, as I'm recording this podcast, on Wednesday, 2 weeks from today, basically against Brooklyn at home. So all that said, full coverage to come. I'm not taking a day off tomorrow, I promise you. I'll have content. I don't know when the next podcast is going to be, but I promise there'll be at least another episode or two between now and Monday. So stay tuned for all of that. Please subscribe to the podcast. One programming note. If you listened to the show last year, you will know this, but there is, during the season, on the audio-only platforms, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Overcast, Amazon Music, etc., there is an extra show on the feed on game nights. It's called the Postcast. It comes from the Locked On Sports Atlanta crew, all one umbrella here at Locked On Sports and Locked On Network. I'm not on that show. It's people that are they're also based in Atlanta. It's an extra show, but those shows will be branded as the Postcast in the audio. We don't combine forces, so that show will usually get posted a little bit before my show, generally speaking, on game nights. But just know, no harm done. You'll have extra content. Listen to it. I encourage you to listen to it. But I will still be there, so don't be confused by that. Last year, it kind of happened fast, and there was some confusion. And in the summer, that kind of goes away. But as soon as the season comes back, they have their own YouTube channel, but the show will be in the Locked On Hawks audio channels, and you'll have both our shows for the price of $0 on those game nights. So just be prepared for that. I don't think they're starting until next week, so stay tuned for that. Just want to say that out loud. And one more time, if you are just finding the podcast now, whether it be for Risacher or because you're finding the season back, and I definitely appreciate it, but please go ahead and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts. Apple or Spotify plus video stuff. However you want to do that, go ahead and do it both ways. So if you're a YouTube subscriber, thank you for that as well. But please also download and subscribe on the audio side and vice versa. Also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. Follow my non-podcast work, which I am starting to fire up again right now for the most part, at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Some extra audio there, some written stuff there. If you want more Hawks coverage from me, patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, that's all I have on today's podcast. Please stay tuned for stuff later on this week. I appreciate you listening. It was a heck of a vibes night in Atlanta. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that, and we'll see you all next time.